My ex-mother-in-law launched a defamation suit against me after I ended my marriage with her unfaithful son, yet I managed to flip the script and reveal their family's entire web of deceit. I, a 26-year-old freshly divorced woman, had just untangled myself from Caleb, a 28-year-old man whose year-long union dissolved in bitter fragments, when, mere weeks later, I discovered that Fiona, my ex's formidable 54-year-old mother, was taking legal action against me for defaming her son. I was utterly baffled at first, unaware of any slander until her sharply dressed attorney explained that I'd supposedly inflicted emotional ruin on him by broadcasting his affair to our mutual circle. They claimed that my honest disclosures had isolated him so completely that even his closest allies fell silent, further deepening his misery. I would have laughed off such charges, except that her attorney, renowned in his field and, as fate would have it, her own brother-in-law, lent an unexpected weight to the threat. That connection alone made me pause and entertain the suit, though deep inside I knew their case was as flimsy as a house of cards. Had an unrelated lawyer been at the helm, they likely wouldn't have wasted time drafting papers at all. After all, truth cannot be defamed, and I had shared the sordid secret only with a couple of trusted friends, not launching a public smear campaign as Fiona claimed. Even if there were merit in their accusations, proving such alleged damage in a courtroom would have been nearly impossible. A $50,000 claim seemed more a bluff than a battle I needed to fight. Once my own lawyer reviewed the documents, I couldn't help but find their arguments laughably absurd. Moreover, I possessed several potent revelations about Caleb that could have dragged him into far graver legal and personal trouble than mere emotional distress. The day after I was served the lawsuit, I dialed Fiona's number. At first, her tone dripped with icy contempt as she insisted that pleading or begging would no longer sway her, and she chided me for ever tarnishing her son's reputation among our circle. Before she could hurl more venom, I interjected, making it clear that my call wasn't for idle apologies. I warned her that if she persisted with the suit, I would expose both her and her son on every available social platform. I painted a vivid picture of the chaos that would ensue once the world learned the truth about their fraudulent family empire. I wasn't alluding to idle gossip, I was referring to the scandal of Caleb's dismissal from his previous job for embezzlement, a fact known only to me and a select few in his family. While he had spun a tale of voluntary departure due to a lack of prospects, the grim reality was that he had been caught siphoning nearly $25,000 from his company's coffers. His reputation was spared and the scandal hushed only because his formidable uncle, the very attorney now on Fiona's side, had fought tooth and nail in the courtroom, footing the settlement bill personally to keep Caleb out of prison. Thanks to that intervention, Caleb now languishes in a respectable position at a firm owned by one of his uncle's acquaintances, where he's effectively watched like a hawk. I know these sordid details because, in the midst of that embezzlement scandal, Caleb and I were living together. Despite warnings from his family to keep mum, he confided everything in me, and I, blinded by love, comforted him through his self-pity, unable to see the slimy scoundrel he truly was. I chose silence over truth, even as I reassured him that everything would smooth over eventually, all the while becoming an unwilling accomplice to his deception. Then, after 5 years together, he betrayed me for his high school sweetheart, a betrayal that now feels like distant, murky water I've long since left behind. Yet, my crusade wasn't for Caleb, it was driven by Fiona herself. I suspect the family's fraudulent streak was a hereditary curse. Caleb had clearly inherited those conman traits from his mother, whose own record of deceit was no secret among those who knew her intimately. I learned of this from one of Caleb's sister's former flames. Caleb's family, consisting of his elder brother Kyle and younger sister Aria, all separated by just 2 years, proved no strangers to this toxic behavior. Aria's college boyfriend, Marcus, a coworker and dear friend, had initially celebrated my romance with Caleb until a Thanksgiving snapshot of me alongside his entire clan left him visibly shaken. Marcus warned me then about Fiona's notorious habit of pouncing on her children's exes, intent on emptying their bank accounts by preying on their naivete. After Aria and Marcus split, Fiona had once called Marcus in a tirade so fierce that, amid drunken hospital visits and screaming fits, she demanded that a certain Ed foot the medical bill. Marcus wasn't wealthy, just a struggling college student, but guilt compelled him to send over every cent he could muster. 2 days later, when he saw Aria strutting confidently back on campus, he confronted Fiona about the veracity of her claims. She retaliated by bombarding him with photos of Aria in a hospital bed, a tactic so manipulative that even Marcus felt remorse for doubting her. In time, he noticed discrepancies. The photos' details didn't match the timeline of their breakup. Her hair, once streaked with pink in recent memories, now appeared untouched by color. Realizing the ruse had been playing out for months, Marcus opted not to reopen old wounds, though he had been the first to caution me about Fiona. But I, enamored by Caleb's charm, had dismissed those warnings, convinced he was my perfect match destined for marriage no matter what. Then came a fateful evening at Kyle's birthday dinner. While nestled among Caleb's family, Kyle casually recounted that his ex had wished him a happy birthday, a remark that sent the table into a fit of raucous laughter. Caleb then quipped about her having to atone for past sins, prompting his mother to chime in with a literal retort, and the room erupted in shared, conspiratorial mirth from which I was conspicuously excluded. Confused by the in-joke, I pressed Caleb for an explanation on our drive home, but he waved it off as merely an inside joke, a reassurance that now seemed ominously misleading. It became apparent, in hindsight, that such petty manipulations were a family tradition. Fiona and her kin routinely exploited every breakup to financially and emotionally drain their exes, preying on their vulnerability with cold precision. Only after our divorce did the full extent of their scheming reveal itself, a revelation that left me ruefully wishing I'd heeded Marcus's cautionary words. That was why, when I warned Fiona that failing to retract the lawsuit would force me to expose her family's swindles online, I wasn't driven by fear of confrontation but rather by a desire to avoid further exhausting legal skirmishes so soon after my divorce. I was already spent from the brutal, drawn-out proceedings of the split, made all the more bitter by Caleb and his family's relentless cruelty. They had meticulously blocked any opportunity for me to leave a cryptic barb, a restraint I honored because any such post might have been twisted into defamation. During that fraught phone call, I flatly told Fiona that unless she rescinded her suit, I would let the world in on every sordid detail of her family's cons. Her reaction was a fit of huffy indignation. She ended the call with a string of insults. Yet, a few days later, as if cowed by the threat of public exposure, she withdrew the lawsuit, a decision that I naively believed would mark the end of our bitter feud. That illusion shattered when, just yesterday, a fuming Caleb appeared at my doorstep, red with anger over my treatment of his mother. He screamed that my threat was despicable, a final, vindictive testament to why he'd been right to leave me for someone better. I was already seething, so I told him to shove off and slammed the door in his face. But he continued his tirade, his voice a piercing echo just outside my door. I considered dialing the police, yet feared that doing so might backfire, given that he was accusing me of blackmail. He taunted me, insisting that if I were so convinced of my righteousness, I should have let the lawsuit run its course and battled him in court. Instead, I had chosen to call Fiona and promised to unmask their entire family online, a phrase that now echoed in my ears as a thinly veiled threat of blackmail. His words stung further when he mocked my strained ties with my own parents, claiming that unlike his devoted mother, they had never protected me. That barb cut deep, recalling bitter memories of family fights and emotional neglect, and I snapped, telling him to leave. He then veered off, railing about how I had stolen everything from him, referencing the house I kept and the car I now owned, accusations I'd heard 1,000 times during our divorce. Yet his insistence on labeling my actions as blackmail lingered in my mind long after he departed. I now wonder if, in my quest for self-defense, I inadvertently stepped into the realm of blackmail. I remain torn, clueless about the next step. Was I wrong for warning my ex-mother-in-law that I would reveal her family's scams if she didn't drop the suit? Update 1. I'm deeply grateful for the avalanche of support and advice flooding in, each comment a balm to my weary heart. Technically, what I did might be brushed off as blackmail, yet I maintain I was merely defending myself. Fiona retracted the suit because she knew full well that proceeding would land her in deeper legal quicksand. I could have retaliated further, suing her, rallying Marcus and the other wronged exes to file a combined petition, but the thought of more legal entanglements after my divorce was simply too exhausting. Many have urged me to band together with the other victims and take a stand, but I yearn for peace rather than a crusade. I'm not a vigilante by nature, and while I might someday unleash my fury if provoked again, for now, I need nothing more than to heal from the stress and chaos. I haven't heard from Caleb in 3 days since his explosive doorstep tantrum. Whether he's moved on or plotting further mischief remains unclear. Given his family's penchant for drama, I suspect they're already brewing something even more elaborate. I've insulted Fiona deeply, and with their wounded egos, I fear they'll stop at nothing to humiliate me. I've kept my lawyer on standby, though I'm determined to avoid further lawsuits if possible. I simply can't afford another round of costly legal battles. For now, I'm clinging to hope that things will settle down. Update 2. Today, my suspicions proved true. They weren't content with a half-hearted phone call or a feeble lawsuit. In an utterly despicable maneuver, they dragged my parents into their drama, a move so low it reaffirmed everything I'd feared about Caleb's family. Though my relationship with my parents had always been rocky, marked by years of distant neglect and unspoken resentments, their recent involvement left me reeling. As a child, I'd learned early that I was more self-reliant than cherished. My parents did the bare minimum, and as I grew, our connection faded into a routine of paying bills and sharing the occasional meal without warmth. College brought a welcome escape, and our interactions dwindled to mere formalities, with tearful goodbyes replaced by relieved separations. When I finally tried to bridge the gap before graduation, their cold, angry voices shattered any lingering hope of reconciliation. They accused me of neglecting our relationship over the years, a bitter exchange that led to fierce arguments and even kept them away from my graduation. Years passed, and just before my wedding, I attempted to bury the past by sharing everything, though tensions remained. Then, in a shocking twist, Caleb's family took their vendetta public. They called my parents in the dead of night, blasting them for my so-called pathetic behavior and decrying how poorly I'd been raised. They even insinuated that my troubled upbringing had driven Caleb to cheat, a scandalous, hurtful charge that left my parents utterly stunned. Soon after, my parents recovered from the shock and called me, their voices filled with protective fury. In an emotional breakdown, I recounted every vile detail, from Fiona's frivolous lawsuit to the relentless harassment by Caleb's kin. Their support, fierce and unexpected, spurred them to insist that I take legal action. Although I hesitated, they convinced me that if I allowed this abuse to continue, they would never stop tormenting me. Now, I'm in consultations with my lawyer about suing them for harassment. Update 3. I apologize for the delay in sharing this next chapter. The chaos of the lawsuit and even losing access to this throwaway account had me disoriented. Following my parents' urging, I proceeded with the legal battle despite my earlier reluctance. About 2 weeks ago, we reached an out-of-court settlement. They were forced to cough up $10,000 for the emotional turmoil inflicted upon both me and my parents. But the story doesn't end there. Once I unveiled the full extent of Fiona's scam, her attempt to coerce me with a bogus lawsuit engineered by her lawyer brother-in-law, along with her pattern of ripping off every one of her children's exes, I couldn't keep the truth hidden any longer. I shared every sordid detail: Caleb's underhanded embezzlement, Fiona's cold manipulation, and her relentless pursuit of exes for profit. My parents advised that I also alert Marcus to the conspiracy. Though he opted not to take legal steps given the passage of time, he did post a damning exposé on social media. The post exploded online as countless victims recounted how Fiona and her family had systematically exploited every ex. Even high school sweethearts weren't spared. Their methods were disturbingly consistent: emotional manipulation, deceit, and guilt-tripping, sometimes over trivial sums, sometimes over staggering amounts like hospital bills. It's both maddening and satisfying to see the tables turn as the internet rallied against them. Their scam has unraveled, and now they're drowning in online vitriol, forced to deactivate their accounts because they can no longer fend off the relentless barrage of demands for repayment. This isn't just about the exes. Friends and acquaintances have joined the chorus, demanding justice. In a delicious twist of irony, as Fiona and Caleb once attempted to manipulate me, they've now overplayed their hand, facing retribution both legally and on social media. I've even secured a restraining order, ensuring they can't harass me further. Perhaps most unexpectedly, this ordeal has mended the frayed ties with my parents. Since that midnight phone call, we've united as a family, supporting one another with a strength I never thought possible. Life, despite its scars, now feels brighter and steadier.